With us now, Florida's Republican Senate candidate, Marco Rubio, and he joins us now. Mr. Rubio, thanks for joining us. And let me start with an issue that if you were a U.S. Senator today, you'd be voting on tomorrow, and that is this extension of unemployment benefits. Florida, I think, is in the top 5 of unemployment in the country. How would you vote on this?
I would vote for it if it's paid for. You'd have to show how it's going to be paid for, and I think Republicans have been working to do that in Washington, and certainly I would be a part of trying to find that. But the bottom line is the best thing we can do for people that are unemployed is grow the private sector, have economic growth. And that's what we've been campaigning about down here, is what can we do to get the private sector excited about the future of America's economy. In just a few moments, I'm going to get the endorsement of NFIB, the voice of small business in America. They're the first ones that will tell you that the policies coming out of Washington have created uncertainty in the private sector, and new jobs aren't being created. So the best thing we can do for the unemployed in the United States and here in Florida is to have private sector job growth, and that's what we need, policies from Washington that will help foster that.
Sir, you mentioned that you want the unemployment extension to be paid for. Would you take that principle to other issues? For example, there's talk, of course, among Republicans that the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest of Americans should be extended, but it sounds like there's not necessarily a plan to pay for those. Would you draw the line there?
Well, let's understand what the bigger picture is, and it's about the debt. And the question is, how are you going to pay that debt off? You're not going to be able to pay that debt off just simply by cutting spending. You're going to have some entitlement reform, but you're also going to have to grow your economy. You need growth to pay down this debt, and then the discipline to take the revenues from that growth and dedicate it to debt retirement. And the only way you're going to create excitement in the private sector to create economic growth in America is to get the private sector engaged again. I mean, we can't lower interest rates any more than they already are. More government spending doesn't get the private sector excited. It's not me saying this, it's small business people, whether it's NFIB, the U.S. Chamber, the leading businesses in America. They're saying, look, we're sitting on money, we're not investing, we're not hiring, because Washington is coming up with a whole bunch of policies that make us unexcited about America's economic future. So we definitely need growth if we want to pay down the debt, and that's why you need policies like an extension and making permanent the 01 and 03 tax cuts.
Okay, but I'm confused. Would you support them if they were not paid for, if they were not balanced out by spending cuts?
Well, the question is, they will be paid for because they create economic growth, especially in the long term, and that's what you need in order to pay.
But not immediately.
You have to look at.
Can you say no?
Yeah, one could say that unemployment is stimulus, and therefore will help people do better and
say that
do
with
growth.
A straight face.
Well, I don't know if people go out and
benefits.
spend money in the economy. I think most economists will tell you that that's stimulus.
Well, first of all, private sector growth is stimulus. Having the government send you a check every month because you're unemployed is a necessity for people that are out of work and need to make basic payments in their life. But even those who are on unemployment would rather have a job, and what we need is an economy that provides that for them. Employment so they can go out and make their own way in the world. They can be excited and more certain about the future. If you're on unemployment benefits, you're not going to go out and buy a house. You're just looking to get a job. As opposed to if you have gainful employment, which is what we need to create more of in America through the private sector, that gives people confidence to actually spend real money into the economy, buy consumer goods, take vacations, buy a house. And unemployment benefits don't offer that kind of, they're short-term stimulus for individuals who need to survive month to month, but it's no way to grow your economy.
I want to shift to another issue that is important to Floridians, and that is this issue of offshore oil drilling and the oil spill in general. First, were you surprised to find out that actually more Floridians have filed claims for the $20 billion BP fund than people from Louisiana? Does that surprise you?
Well, we have an enormous tourist sector in Northwest Florida in the peak season. The real tragedy of this is that North Florida, unlike the rest of the state, the peak tourism season is only about 100 days in Northwest Florida, and this happens smack in the middle of it. And what's really sad is this was supposed to be the bounce back year. So it doesn't surprise me, because I think a lot of folks in that area are on the verge of going out of business, and going out of business forever. And so we obviously need to take care of them in the short term, but we also start thinking economically in the long term about what we can do to help revitalize the region.
Sir, as I understand it, you do support offshore drilling. Is there anything about this experience in the Gulf of Mexico with BP that has made you alter your position or refine it at all?
Yeah, the refinement is that we need to make sure it's done safely. I think as we go forward in this investigation every day, we're finding out more and more about how BP cut corners, how they went forward with this despite warnings by some of the contractors on site and others that there was a danger involved, and that was the result of this accident. You know, there's been drilling in the Gulf since the late 1940s. This is the first accident of this magnitude ever, and I think we're going to find as time goes on, according to the evidence that's beginning to emerge, that it was the result of BP cutting corners, and that we should never allow that to ever happen again.
You've been very critical of Governor Chris calling the special session on oil drilling, saying it's nothing more than a political stunt. So tell me this, how do you want this special session to go on oil drilling? Do you think there should be an extension, say, of a moratorium around the waters of the state of Florida for a certain period of time? What are some constructive things that could happen in this session on oil drilling?
First of all, let me clarify something. Offshore drilling on Florida's waters is illegal in Florida. It's not a moratorium. The statutes prohibit it. You'd have to change the law in order to do that. And since the legislature is not going back into session until November, and no one in the legislature is promoting that now, even though legislative leaders and Charlie Crist supported offshore drilling in Florida's waters as recently as 5 months ago. So there's no imminent danger of there ever being offshore drilling on Florida's waters. As far as what should be done, I think they're headed in the right direction. Both the Senate President and Speaker of the House have said they're going to appoint a work group. They're going to come back in September, and they're going to have a special session where they're going to look at things like property tax relief, sales tax holidays, and other economic measures that they can take to help the region be revitalized. But they want to do that in a serious and thoughtful way that they know will be effective. They don't want to use the Gulf oil spill the way Charlie Crist does as a political photo op, as an opportunity to continue to get camera time and using the suffering of the region as a prop for his own campaign.
And then real quick before we let you go, I know we're out of time. I'm sure you heard about the NAACP's statement last week that there were racist elements within the Tea Party movement. I wonder what your response is to that, considering you have a lot of support from the Tea Party movement.
Well, it's not what I've encountered. When I've gone to tea parties, what I run into is Americans of all walks of life, including Democrats, independents, from every race, ethnicity, religion, and background, who simply are tired of the direction that our country's headed, do not believe the traditional American institutions of politics are doing a good job at addressing that, are tired of people going to Washington who will say or do anything to get reelected, but won't confront the major issues of our time, and they're looking to express themselves, and the Tea Party's given them an opportunity to do that. So it's not what I have seen.
All right, Marco Rubio, the likely, at this point, the likely Republican nominee for U.S. Senate. And hopefully, I know you're in Tampa, so you can't say this, but hopefully you're really a Canes fan since you're a Miami guy and not a Gator or a Seminole. If I hear anything else,
I'm a Gator fan.
Really
I'm a Gator fan.
Oh,
well, I'm
boy,
a Gator fan, but I like Ja'Cory Harris. He's a real good kid.
Isn't it?
No, I went to University of Florida, but Ja'Cory Harris is a good kid. I wish him the best. I think he's got a good future.
All right, Marco Rubio, stay safe on the campaign trail. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.